In 2011, a wave of protests swept across the Middle East. People demanded change. Syria was no exception. It began in the city of Dara. Citizens wanted more freedom and democracy. However, the government responded with force. This sparked outrage. Peaceful protests turned into armed rebellion. The Syrian army clashed with opposition groups. The country descended into civil war. Many Syrians were forced to flee their homes. They became refugees in neighboring countries. Millions were displaced within Syria itself. The situation was chaotic. Different groups fought for control. There were moderate rebels who wanted democracy. However, extremist groups also emerged. They had a more radical vision for Syria. This made the conflict even more complex and dangerous. The Syrian people were caught in the middle. They faced violence and displacement. The country was on the brink of collapse. It was a dark chapter in Syria's history. As the Syrian conflict raged on, a new danger emerged: extremism. Among the rebel groups, some held radical beliefs. They were known as Takfiris. Takfiris believed that other Muslims who don't share their views are not true Muslims. They consider them apostates deserving of death. One of the most notorious Takfiri groups was Jabhat al-Nusra. They were affiliated with Al-Qaeda, a global terrorist network. Another group, even more extreme, was ISIS. Short for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS aimed to establish a caliphate. This meant a single Islamic state ruled by strict Islamic law. These jihadist groups, fueled by Takfiri ideology, committed horrific atrocities. They carried out mass executions, persecuted minorities, and enslaved women. Their goal was to create fear and impose their rule. The rise of extremism added a terrifying dimension to the Syrian conflict. It became a battleground not just for territory, but also for the very soul of Islam. The international community watched in horror as these groups gained power and spread their ideology of hate. The Syrian conflict was not just an internal struggle, it quickly became a proxy war, with foreign powers getting involved to further their own interests. The United States and its allies supported the moderate rebels, providing them with weapons and training. However, some of this aid ended up in the hands of extremist groups. On the other side, Russia and Iran stepped in to back the Syrian government. Russia provided air support, while Iran sent troops and supported Shiite militias. This foreign intervention escalated the conflict, making it even more deadly and complex. The involvement of regional powers further fueled the fire. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, for instance, provided funding and arms to various rebel groups, often with their own agendas. This influx of weapons prolonged the war and made a peaceful resolution even more elusive. The Syrian conflict became a tangled web of alliances and rivalries. It turned into a battleground for regional and global powers, with the Syrian people caught in the crossfire. The proxy war had devastating consequences, leading to further bloodshed and instability. By 2017, the tide seemed to be turning against the jihadist groups. A combination of Russian air power, Syrian ground forces, and a US-backed Kurdish-led militia known as the SDF pushed back ISIS and other extremist groups. However, the cost of victory was immense. Cities like Raqqa, once the de facto capital of ISIS, were left in ruins. While ISIS lost its territorial control, the remnants of jihadist groups remain active in some parts of Syria. The country is far from stable, and the scars of conflict run deep. Millions of Syrians are still displaced, living in refugee camps or struggling to rebuild their lives. The Syrian war is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the enduring threat of extremism. The international community faces the daunting task of helping Syria recover and rebuild. It is a long and difficult process, but one that is crucial for the future of Syria and the region. Despite the challenges, there is hope. Many Syrians remain resilient, determined to create a better future for themselves and their children. The international community must support their efforts and work towards a political solution that brings lasting peace and stability to this war-torn country.